Hi, and welcome to Dani After Dark. If you're new here, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss a notification or a new episode. Tonight is the first official episode of the Dani After Dark monthly book club. And for this month, we'll be doing Truman Capote's In Cold Blood. So I do have a link in the comments here with a StreamYard link. So if anybody wants to come on and give a little bit of a review or your thoughts on the book, please feel free to do so. If you don't want to be on camera and you want to just type your thoughts in the chat, please do so as well. Or if you're watching and you don't want to be on camera and you don't want to be in the chat and you just want to sit back and watch, even better. Feel free to do that as well. I did put a couple of kind of housekeeping rules in the chat as well, and I did star them. And I realized after I read it, I was like, this sounds actually really harsh, and I didn't mean it that way. So again, for anybody that wants to come on camera, you do not have to be physically on camera. You can keep it on an avatar, if you will, or just a background of, a picture of your choosing. All that I ask is that before I bring you up, just take that setting off just so I can see you and know you're a real life person and not the penis bandit. And if you're wondering, Dani, who the heck is the penis bandit? Yeah, that was like COVID times going around channels, and it was a real thing. And some of us had to survive that. So nonetheless. Also, if you do want to come on camera as well, I just ask that you keep your microphone. If there's a bunch of people, keep it muted until you're speaking, because otherwise when there's several people and it picks up different microphones, the audio just sounds distorted. So just those few things. Also, since this is the very first episode, I'm really, really excited about this. And this is something where we can be engaging with each other, but also kind of see how it goes. Over time, format might just kind of organically shift to whatever we all just want to do with this. And I'm totally open to that. So again, first episode. So if there's any little hiccups, my apologies. But with that being said, we do have one brave soul backstage. So let's go ahead and bring him on. And you might recognize him. Actually, you should recognize him because he's a good friend of the show, Zach Kopp. Hey, Zach.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Dani.
How you doing?
I'm doing okay.
Good.
Thanks for inviting me. I think it's a great idea to let the format evolve and take its own shape.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that.
Awesome. So there are a few people in the chat. I see, like, here's Tish. I didn't make it through the book. I have read it before. Okay, that's cool as well. We have Matilda here. Matilda says, hi, Zach, as
Hi, Matilda.
well. Beckham is just going to hang out backstage. Wolf, yeah. And anybody who just kind of wants to pop in, feel free. So I have some notes that I took on reading the book, because this was actually my first time reading the book. And Zach, I know me and you were talking a little bit backstage. So you've had this book, how long did you say?
A long time. I brought it in. Look how old it is. And you can tell when you read this book that it was an earlier phase of society. This is vintage 1965. So I'm pretty old. Not in the best shape, but
that's awesome.
250 used.
Yeah, I got mine on eBay, and it looks like that. Yeah, cool. So what I figured I would do is give a read of, and I'm curious actually if the back of your book is the same as mine. Just kind of give a brief reading of the back so everybody kind of has an idea, if you are not familiar with this book, what it's about, and then we'll kind of dive into it. So again, In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. So on November 15th, 1959, in the small town of Holcomb, Kansas, 4 members of the Clutter family were savagely murdered by blasts from a shotgun held a few inches from their faces. There was no apparent motive for the crime, and there was almost no clues. As Truman Capote reconstructs the murder and the investigation that led to the capture, trial, and execution of the killers, he generates both mesmerizing suspense and astonishing empathy. In Cold Blood is a work that transcends its moment, yielding poignant insights into the nature of American violence. So, does the back of your book say the same thing too?
It's not the same. Do you want to hear it?
Yes, I do.
Absolutely. A masterpiece, a spellbinding work, life, a riveting recreation of a savage crime. New York World Telegram, Truman Capote's In Cold Blood. The spectacular bestseller about the brutal slayings of the Clutter family of Holcomb, Kansas. The police investigation, the capture, the trial, and the execution of the two young murderers, Richard Hickok and Perry Smith. Capote has thrust the act of violence before the reader as if it were happening before his very eyes. Time. In Cold Blood, now a major motion picture written for the screen and directed by Richard Brooks, a Columbia Pictures release in Panavision.
Oh my God! I prefer your back of the book
edition or something.
I prefer the back of your book description than mine.
It's the 12th edition, but still.
Wow, that is awesome. One of the things that I've read, because I had not read this book until this, so I'm not going to lie, but it was one of those, this book is like one of the true crime OGs, similar to Vincent Bugliosi's Helter Skelter.
So
I
wouldn't say that.
I know. So okay. So the kind of background description I have here, some of the notes I have might be a little. How many? Okay, because like I have my book is 348 pages. How many is yours?
Mine is 384. Different shape though.
Okay,
and
no,
maybe
that's
different
fair.
Grain of paper.
Interesting. Okay. So, in regards to, I guess, why don't we talk about just if there was any overall impressions that you had with the book, anything like that stood out to you, whether in a good way or in a constructive criticism
Yes.
way.
So what is notable and I think caused got attention when the book was first published about the structure is that he goes from bystander to bystander and gets different opinions, different perspectives, rather than trying to take you through a linear narrative. Although there are some sequences where it's like chapter follows chapter, but for the most part it isn't that way, and it has multiple perspectives. And that was my first impression. I was like, well, that's a nice technique anyway, but it was really hard for me to make my way into this novel. It seemed to spend a whole lot of time on creating the idea of pastoral, like sacrosanct, American small town safety, pleasance, and then like violation by the two Hickok and Smith, the two murderers. Mm-hmm. And it seemed to spend a lot of time just kind of establishing that. And as a reader, I felt like I knew I was being done with, kind of like dealt with as a reader, like, oh, we're going to make him feel like he's in a pastoral place. And I don't know, I had a hard time getting into it, but then when I rejoined and I was about 3/4 of the way through and it was giving Perry Smith's, also there was a moment about Perry Smith's father texts John Smith, which I thought was kind of surreal, and about the halfway through. And then when it gets to Perry's statement and Hickok's statement, they both reveal all these really weird, horrible things about their childhood. And like all of a sudden, Dick is a pedophile. we didn't see that coming. And then there's a weird thing about a sliver of glass comes out of his eye, and he just kind of skips over that. It's a reminiscence. And poor Perry, I mean, he's crippled. He's had an accident. His feet are as small as a child's. I have to wonder. But then there's also there's been allegations for a long time that Capote like had some kind of crush on Perry, and that I don't know. I mean, apparently it was not ever consummated, but I sort of detect a little of that sentiment all the way through in his conversation about his depiction of Perry.
Interesting.
I don't know, but like when I rejoined it, I was suddenly captivated because it became like really scandalous and like, oh my God, what? He's a pedophile, and then there's like a sliver of glass and just all these little details. Also, the cats who are scavengers for bits of birds that have flown into the grills of cars. Remember that part?
Like Perry notices like that stuff. I try to skip it.
Well, it's weird. It's the kind of detail that that really hooks your attention. And he says like, and I've been doing the same thing all my life in a way. And I don't know, it's moments like that you kind of wonder how much creative license Truman Capote is allowing himself. But I don't know. I went from page 314 to page 374, so I've missed. There's still 60 pages unread. I skipped ahead to the last chapter. I like the ending.
Yes.
Except he shouldn't have double spaced between D and end. I don't know if that's in your copy.
I don't think so. No, now I need to like double check. Yeah, no.
No. So I don't know. They were a lot more theatrical in the 60s, I suppose.
I think I probably would have. The way yours is set up, like, okay, so first, like reading the back of my book, then going into reading it, it just seems very ordinary. You know, I would see like walk by this on the shelves and not be captured by it. Nothing like really jumps out right away.
That sensationalism.
But the way yours is, like that description you first read, like that is something where I'm like, I need to grab that. Like that's the book I need. So, I feel a little gypped that mine just seemed very like washed over, but I do have to say this was one of the for me one of, and feel free to Zach jump in at any point whether you're like Dani I agree or Dani I completely disagree. For me this was one of the harder reads that I've done in a while, and it wasn't that it was too complex to read or understand. It was the format of it. It was just very, like you said, it kind of went from person to person. So you were getting different perspectives and it just kind of jumped. There was, to me, not like a smooth transition.
It's very different from your average crime novel. Yeah.
Also, like, it goes into a lot of detail about everything. And it seemed honestly a little hard to follow in regards to some of the times I've been reading. I'm like, where is this going? Like, this is for somebody who likes that really great attention to detail, like they would absolutely love this. But for me, it got to the point where as I'm reading the book, I'm like, okay, where is this going? In some of the directions where it went into detail, I'm like, okay, that was necessary to set up what was about to come. And then in other instances, I'm like, what was that for?
That's what I think when he's trying to create the pastoral thing before the violation. I think that's a lot of that is the detail you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like, why did they spend so much time on what Mr. Whatever does in his backyard with the roses or whatever detail? I mean, I don't know. But you know what's interesting? I'm pretty sure this was Truman's first book. Have you ever read To Kill a Mockingbird?
Oh God, a long time ago.
So he's Dill. Yeah. He was actually Harper Lee's, buddy, neighbor kid. And apparently like he this was his first attempt to. She became famous with that book, and I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure that this was his first book, and he was trying to sort of like, look, Harper became famous, and like maybe I can do that. I shouldn't say anything like that. I shouldn't presume. I think he's deceased now. God rest him. But I've heard, and I didn't know, but I've heard that she actually helped him write this novel, or helped him like get in the mood to write a novel, and like try. I mean, I don't know. This is something I heard. I'm not
Yeah,
even. This is not
I don't
even
know
my
either way.
opinion. But and apparently there's been films made about it. My friend
Yes.
Devin, Daniel's brother, is like, there's been 2 films made about it. I don't know.
Yeah, I have not seen the films. I will say, so being
So
somebody
that's another factor, like how maybe she wrote parts of it.
good point.
I
Good
don't
point.
know.
Kane says, I disagree. I think it was a masterpiece. Fair, fair. Tish is saying it really reads like a novel, which takes me right out of it. I'll watch the movie over reading novels. That is a completely fair
I think
comment.
he was trying to do that. I think he really wanted to be respected as an artful writer, you know, and I think it may even have been the first true crime book. So I feel like he was he's like, I'm going to give it my voice. This is the first time anyone's done it. I'm going to be an artist about it. So like, I can respect it as a masterpiece when considered as an artwork.
And especially for the time that this came out, this was, I mean, you know, in regards to true crime books now, there's thousands upon thousands. I mean, there's so many that get published every single day. Back then, something like this, something like, I hate to compare it to, but Helter Skelter, so different for its time. So this would be something that would be
Good point.
completely captivating.
He was probably trying to be like, well, they like novels. I'll take
Mm-hmm.
a true crime story and make a novel. And it probably would have, I'm sure it would have read completely differently to people from that era.
Oh,
Than it does, like
100%.
after all the true crime, you know.
Tish is saying, I'll never forget the funeral home details. Oh, I
Mm.
know. I know. So for me, this was one of those books where if I'm able to, I would I would sit and just, if I have the time, read a whole book in one sitting. This was one I tried to, and I couldn't. I absolutely couldn't. I had to break it up into parts because there was so much information that I felt like if I just sat and read it, just would have, you know, been lost in translation. But
I'm never sure if it's me or the book, but it took me until 3/4, and then it was good. And I was like, oh, okay. So maybe I just had to get used to this style, but it didn't throw me exactly. I'm not sure.
yeah, it's different than I say it all the time when I do like my book reviews. This is just me. This is just my style. I like things in a cohesive chronological order. Like I just very simply put, I don't need, all the, the extras and all of that, but this book, like you said, it did jump from character to character. But again, it did give a lot on each. And in regards to, I will say that the beginning of the book gave a lot of information about the Clutter family themselves. And true crime books don't generally do that. Even nowadays, it's very, centered around the perpetrators or the killers. So to have a book even back then that gave so much about each member of the family was very well done. Very
Yeah.
well done.
And Anthony DiMaria was talking about how the victims are pretty much just second fiddle to the drama of whoever killed them.
Yeah,
In
they're just a
today's
footnote
media depiction.
usually. But here we got to learn all of and the names of the Clutter family members, just so we have that out there for anybody who hasn't read it. It is Herbert and Bonnie, they are the parents, and then Nancy and Kenyon are the kids. And when I say kids, I mean older kids. So for me, one of the things that really just kind of, when I was reading it, just like kind of like grabbed me and I was like, oh, I feel so bad, was any of the discussions about Nancy and, or more so Nancy's boyfriends. Like, oh my gosh, you just, how heartbroken he was. It just, and then he was looked at as a suspect because he was the last one there the night before.
It's interesting that this might have been the very first example of true crime, because that's a repeating thing in true crime histories, that, you know, the boyfriend gets blamed or the family member automatically gets blamed. Sometimes it's true, sometimes it's false. What was the boyfriend's name again?
Oh my gosh, I'm looking through my notes. I want to say, was it Bobby?
Oh, I think it might have been
Bobby. Yep. Yeah, it was Bobby. But I mean, it would make sense that the police would start with him because he was the last one there. But then and one of the reasons was, and I was just reading it and I'm like, oh, rookie detectives, like, oh, well, the parents didn't want them to like continue their relationship because, you know, they were just young kids and were, you know, but I'm thinking that makes no sense. He is mad at the parents not wanting him and Nancy to continue their relationship. So he's going to kill the parents and Nancy and her brother. Like, come on.
sense.
Yeah.
And all this was all happening in the like fear of juvenile delinquent era, like the teen rock and roll, leather jacket, motorcycle, fear of teenagers kind of era, which is interesting.
Yeah. Let's see. So A Constant Process. Hi, welcome. The movie Capote got me interested in the book. Both are wonderful pieces of art. I have not seen that, but thank you for putting that in there.
I haven't either. That's probably one of the ones that I was told about.
So what I'm curious too, if anybody who is watching in the chat or maybe catches this on replay, is this book is also available on Audible. And I'm very curious if, I don't want to say reading it, but taking that book in that format, if that would be different, like a different experience than me and you had, Zach. Maybe you're able to absorb more if it's kind of read to you. And I kind of wondered that when I was reading it, because I was like, I can only read so much and I have to put it down. But
good question. I wonder if the different perspectives are like offset in some way, or if it just follows the narrative.
Yeah.
Might make it hard to listen through, but might be easy to follow.
So, oh gosh, this makes me, I don't know what to say about this. I did a book report on this book 46 years ago. I think I got an A. I don't remember much of it. Kane did too. Oh my gosh. That's awesome. Oh my goodness. So in regards to the killers, Dick and Floyd, what was your thoughts on them, Zach, in regards to maybe them individually or their dynamic together? Because it wasn't like they were two people setting out to, like, you know, do all these crimes together. It was, which they did to a point, but it was also, one was very much attached to the other one. The other one was just like, I want to get rid of you. It was a very weird dynamic.
In your copy, is he called Floyd?
Yes, he's called Floyd.
In my book, it's Perry. It's Dick and Perry. So maybe there was like a legal maneuver. Maybe even to do with the rumored affair.
So, okay, wait. Dick and Perry, and then Floyd was also involved as well. So no, you're right. Sorry, somebody else was involved in that. No, you're right. Okay.
Oh, Floyd was probably the one who first told him about the Clutters having a sink.
He knew who committed the murders. Okay, yep, sorry. I was
no problem. So what was I saying?
Oh, the dynamic between.
Oh, yeah. Well, Perry seems very private, and Dick seems very, like, it's sort of like an introvert-extrovert thing. And Perry, are you thinking Dick is the one who wants to get rid of Perry? Hickok wants to get rid of Smith.
So, let me just. Okay. Yeah, so Dick was the one that was really kind of running the show, and Perry was just kind of going along, going along, going along.
Yeah. I agree with that. And Dick is the one who was told by Floyd and given a map or described the layout of the house. It's it's weird. I don't know if you've heard that Truman Capote was one of the talented people who criticized On the Road when it first came out. He said, that's not writing, it's typewriting. I'm not sure what he means even, but like the In Cold Blood is almost like an anti On the Road, where it's not Neil and Jack, but it's like Dick and Perry. And Dick is the Neil, the extrovert, like leading the, charge. And Perry is the Jack Kerouac guy, kind of just with his own private tragedy and like thinking more deeply about things. Perry, I don't know. They're both tragic figures. Perry seems to be more portrayed as the more tragic of the two.
Yes.
And then even when they're hanged at the end, Dick is like, no, it was the shortest night of my life, and like smiling and cheerful about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's an interesting thing. He's got two sides of a coin there.
Mm-hmm. You like there were several moments too throughout the book where Perry, like he would bring it up, like they would be doing something and he would bring it up, bring the murders up, and Dick would be
That's
like,
true.
why do you keep bringing this up? Like it's done. So that was.
So Truman Capote made him like the good guy in the equation, like the conscience.
I wouldn't say good guy, but yeah, conscience. Yeah, absolutely. Because what.
And then doesn't he in the end? Doesn't he admit that he killed everyone? Sorry.
No. Go ahead.
Because it seemed like there was a confusion at his first confession. He said, "Well, Dick killed two of them," and then in the end he changes his confession and admits that he killed everyone.
Yeah.
So that's a weird thing. And Dick is the more egregious, like nice guy, extrovert, and Perry's the brooding private one. And it turns out that he's the mass murderer of the two.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting plot point. I don't know. I'm not sure where. I think his moral getaway at the end is where the young girl walks off with her hair swinging in the sun, and it's like a healthy reaffirmation of life and youth. Truman doesn't try to make too much moral grandstanding apparent.
Yeah. So Kane is saying they now think they may have been responsible for a home invasion murder in Florida.
There was something. I wonder if it's the same thing. There was something about Tallahassee.
Yeah.
Is that in Florida?
Yep.
And in my copy, it's like, well, they just happened to be there, and Perry said it was probably a nut inspired by the Clutter killings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's interesting, Kane, that you mentioned
there's
that.
New evidence.
Yeah, kind of brushed over in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Zach, when you mentioned earlier about each of their upbringings, and they are very tragic, and that's one of the. It's interesting how this book being, going as far back as it was written versus kind of, more up to date current true crime books that put out now. That is such a common theme that we have where, the perpetrators, the killers, there's always this, for the most part, this very just horrific background in growing up. Again, obviously, you can put out there like 50 other people who've been through something similar and didn't turn out to do what these men did, but it's interesting how there's those similar traits.
It seems like in today's true crime account that would have been in the forefront, or would have like carried you through your whole understanding of the perpetrator. and Truman sort of saves it for a surprise because of the multiplicity of, perspective. When you finally get to that background, it's a surprise you didn't expect.
Yeah. But I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of the things too that, again, I found this a little frustrating as a reader is, even with the backgrounds on each of them, it would start at one section of the book and then it would, jump to 5 other things and then it would pick up again later. And it was just a little all over the place for me, but
it's very different from the regular. Yeah.
yeah.
I've come to appreciate that tactic, but I think it can be done to different degrees of success. But and if he's the first one who ever did it, I have to say, well, good, thanks. Because I've done the same thing, and I think I've done a better job of it. But look who's talking.
That was the best plug. That it was just so seamless, Zach. You're like, I've done better in my books. CampbellSSCProductions.com.
But I try to detract from it by saying, but look who's talking.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm tooting my own horn.
So, okay, so I have a question for you. That we get to hear from Perry and Dick in regards to what happened that night in regards to the killing of the Clutters. Originally, it was, they were going to break in to get a safe that Floyd had said was there. There was no safe. The plan wasn't to kill the family, but then there was no safe. They tied them up and shot them one by one. Do you think that was the plan the whole time?
I can't say it wasn't. It hadn't occurred to me. But I mean, it's such a. I don't think anyone's ever quite resolved who killed them, although there's conflicting accounts. It seems like Perry said Dick killed 2 of them, and then he retracted that and said I killed all of them. But then the officers retained the original because they wanted to, we've got enough evidence on you both. So the whole thing is kind of mysterious. But what makes you think that was always the intention?
I think one, because of the conflicting reports that they were giving. I think that the fact that they kind of minimized it, but then admitted, to me, that speaks more of not so much, pushing off, all 4 of the murders onto somebody else, but minimizing the whole scenario. I kind of picked up on tones where I'm like, it didn't seem to me just like a straight up robbery. I think there was too much aggression within them and too much bottled up. I don't know if anger is the right word, but
angst.
I understand. I could see if they maybe went after the father because they thought he would have cash on him. And when they, I could follow that, where it's like a robbery gone wrong. But the way it was done for all 4, I'm like, it was too much overkill to be a robbery gone wrong to me.
Interesting.
It was really overkill, even for this. And I mean, I've read a lot of true crime books, and I'm not saying that in a bad way, but it's just, this was really overkill for what the intent was. And it didn't say that they were necessary. If I hate to compare it to the Manson family, but the night of the Manson family murders, they were on, a whole slew of drugs. That would have explained the overkill if it was a robbery gone wrong because of that. But there wasn't that element to it. I don't know. I don't have proof.
I guess historically it was kind of the beginning of a trend in serial killings in America, which I hadn't thought of until just now. But that makes this, that's a very provocative possibility, because maybe it's just been misrepresented for all these decades.
Well, and then even what you pointed out earlier, the kind of, what was it, Truman Capote's, what was the kind of the sexual undertone that you were talking about? Who was it towards again?
There's been allegations that he and Perry had some kind of vibe. I don't know if it's ever been alleged that they actually acted on anything, but Perry, I guess, had a known, or had an alleged tendency in that direction. And Truman, we've all heard, has that tendency. So that's, I mean, I was going to take a look at some Wikipedia before this began, but I didn't have time to get more knowledge on it. But there have been allegations along those lines, and it seems like Truman highlights that aspect of Perry's character. Like when he's in the women's cell, he was the first convict or whatever to ever be in the women's cell. Little lines like that here and there, but I mean, it's probably true also, potentially true also, but just that he would select these details and highlight them seem to stick out. But like, I'm not against anything. I'm not a homophobe. Everything's cool. I just trying to understand.
I wish I knew that, because then I would have. I didn't know that. So now I'm like thinking back to like, oh, were those tones or vibes throughout that I just missed?
Hopefully there's something to back up my allegation on Wikipedia or Google. So if any of the listeners out there can find it, and call in or like type it in.
Phone a friend. I just have to say, college rule 101, never use Wikipedia.
Oh no.
Well, for like just basic stuff, but like, oh my gosh, we got drilled for that in college. Never go to Wikipedia. Never go to Wikipedia.
I've seen it fail. I've seen it fail terribly, but it's usually fairly reliable.
So there was one character, and this was one where, and I know I just went on like several rants of like, oh, there's too much detail. But this, I was like, all right. And the character was Donald, and I'm probably mispronouncing his last name, Cullivan.
Oh, yeah. He was
a friend of Perry's from Boston. So, of course, I'm like, all right, Boston represent. But he came to testify on his behalf. And that was one of the things that was very shocking to those who were involved in the case at that time, because here's this very successful career gentleman. He's an engineer. He got his degree from Harvard, wife, 3 kids. But he's here going to, again, testify for Perry on his behalf.
Yeah, I must have missed that. I got the part where he wrote the letter, and Perry is like, I'm not sure I remember him, but he's like, sure, I remember Don Cullivan, because he needs help, and Don's offering help. But he did show up and testify, huh?
Yeah, he did. He did. And that was a weird friendship. Like you said, how it kind of, like, it just from a letter, and it was just, yeah.
And I kind of like that aspect of the multiple perspectives, because you get like fully fleshed out weird friendship, and then like different, fully established plot lines one after another. And that's the thing I find engaging. But when it's mostly detail and description, it kind of lags.
Yeah. So, all right, look, it came here. They wanted to annihilate a family. Thank you. Yeah, I agree. I agree. In regards to, so for anybody reading this that, I don't know, this book is kind of twofold in regards to, I feel like if somebody's into kind of the more historical background information and kind of layout of where the setting is, like this book covers it in great detail.
Mhm.
But on the flip side, it also doesn't spare details about the crimes. It was very detailed. I was surprised how detailed it was.
The gun was dripping blood. What a line. What a line.
Oh, yeah, it was just very. Oh, I hate to compare it to Helter Skelter. I know I'm gonna look back at this and be like, Dani, why did you do that? But for its time to be that graphic, I was surprised because again, I hadn't read this book till now. So
So think of it as a trial run, you know. He made some mistakes, he got some things right. He inspired, you know, later true crime authors who ironed out his flaws. I
so
mean, we have to give him that.
that
But
is very true.
it's an
Very, very
imperfect specimen, but you know, nice job.
yeah. It
Nice
does.
first try.
One of the things that it reminded me of the Ed Gein case was in regards to after the murders had occurred, the bodies of the four family members were removed and the property just kind of stood there. There was still so many people from the community that would just go
Mm.
and stand and be outside there. And it really reminded me of Ed Gein in his family's farm. How, I mean, the Ed Gein one was on a different level, but there was still that curiosity back then of wanting to be there. And for whatever reason it was still there.
It's still there today, or at least, you know, a few years ago. Because I was
Oh, it's
dating
still no,
I
it's
was
still there
dating a
today.
girl
Let's
in
call it
grade
like
10,
it is.
and
It's
we
still there
drove by the
today.
line of trees.
Yeah, that was one thing that I found very interesting. And then that scene, oh God, was it Thanksgiving or Christmas? It was one holiday. I think it was Christmas when Bobby like ran from his family's home and ran to the clutter house
Mhm.
and just yeah, and like there was other people there and it just stand oh my gosh, it was just so heartbreaking. It was just so heartbreaking. But and then the other note that I had about this, so you didn't finish the end of the book.
Well, I read the last chapter. I skipped from
The last.
314 to 374, so I missed the trial.
Okay. I will say, and once you do go back and read it, I would be very curious your thoughts on it. I thought it was written in a way where it was a little, I don't, kind of hard to follow because it was so kind of
I,
all over the
I
place.
think I detected a trace of it. Like, I think maybe it's because people are remembering things and they put themselves all the way back in their past experience, which is just kind of bad writing, but I think I understand what I have to do to surmount it.
But it was, yeah, once they are, I mean, spoiler alert, for anybody who, this crime was committed X amount of years ago, but they were found guilty and they were given the death sentence,
Mm.
and were hanged. But at the very, very end of the book, where Mr. Dewey and Susan Kidwell are at the graves.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
That was one of the most powerful parts of the book to me. It was just, oh my gosh, just one of those moments where that was when I would have liked more detail.
Those are the masterpiece moments.
Yeah,
I'll say.
yeah, absolutely. But yeah, for the most part, those were kind of my little, takeaways from the book. Was there anything that you kind of picked upon that maybe that we didn't talk about so far?
I think Truman has a way of sometimes being poetic, one-liner poetic prose. Like when the detective is talking, I can't remember which one of them, but he's talking to either Perry or Dick, and he draws a dagger on his notebook. just a little image like that. And then when the hangman shows up, he's a silent, leathery faced man, in a pinstripe suit. Just little weird details. And the thing again about the cats who like scavenge in the grills of cars for bird flesh from birds that have been hit by car. I mean, I don't know if that's even something cats do, but it's a weird little line that kind of hooks your attention. And as a writer, I mean, like, we're not supposed to regard true crime as an artwork, but as a writer, I can look at that as nice writing.
Right. And you give a very different perspective on this because you are a writer and you are an author. So I can't even, I totally forgot to even mention that at the beginning, that you would look at, a work like this very different than I would.
Also because of the Kerouac thing. Because I used to be a big fan of Kerouac, and that's always mentioned in every biography,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting. Oh my gosh, I wish I said that at the beginning too, just to, give that a little extra.
Oh, thanks for letting me join the book club tonight, and I'm sorry if I was a loudmouth. I feel like I...
Oh my gosh, no, thank you for being on. Thank you. I wasn't sure, again, with the first one, like how many people would want to be on camera or whatnot. So I was just like, I didn't know what to expect. So I'm very happy that you came on. Thank you.
Right on. I'm glad to be here.
Let's see, a couple of comments. A constant process. This is from a bit ago, but I think Capote meant that Kerouac wrote without metaphor and not poetically. He kind of told more than showed. Capote called him a Neanderthal with a typewriter.
I thought he might have meant like a type, like the beatnik type. It's typewriting, but that works too.
Oh, Tish says, where can we get your book, Zach?
Oh, wow. Thank you. I think they're all at Amazon. Mm-hmm. And the new one is at barnesandnoble.com, which is all interviews, articles, and essays. Thanks for asking.
And your website lists them as well, Camp Elasticity Productions.
Well, I feel like they might have locked me out. I feel like I can't access, or like I didn't pay the bill. So maybe go to rarebutserious.com. But there is a lot of stuff on Camp Elasticity too.
Gotcha. Okay. But yes, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. And I totally just butchered that, Barnes and Noble. It's been a long week, everybody. I'm just getting over being sick. I still sound horrible, so my apologies. Okay. And Tish says, let's read I will add the new evil one to the Google Doc. I already did Killer by Design by Ann Burgess. So I already did that one.
Can I recommend one?
You can recommend as many as you'd like.
Okay, Weird Scenes Inside the Gold Mine.
All right. I need to write this down now because
I can send it to you in an email. But that's all about Laurel Canyon. And all the weirdness.
All right, I got it in my notes. Okay. So I'm just double checking if I missed anything. Oh yeah, just one little side note that because it was an unsolved case, the Kansas Bureau of Investigations gave 18 staff members full time to help try to solve this case. I was shocked that they gave that many for back then. That was very surprising. But then again, this type of crime.
They were probably very scandalized that such a thing would even happen back then,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
and especially in that community.
Yeah.
And to who the victims were. There's that as well. Yeah, there's all those layers. So. All right. So if anybody has any last minute comments or questions, please leave them in the chat. If you're watching this on replay, by all means, please leave any comments. Or if you read the book, by all means, please give your thoughts on it. In regards to next month, so again, the beginning of the month, I will do a kind of a poll in the Dani After Dark book hub Facebook group with a few books. Give a few days for a vote, and then that's the one that we will review at the end of each month. And I'm totally open to switching days if certain nights of the week work better for people. Whatever's fine with me. We will see how this goes. But
all right.
Thank you so much, Zach, again for joining me for this. I really appreciated all of your insight on this book.
Well, thank you. It was pretty uncoordinated, but hopefully hopefully it hit the right spot.
Yes, very much. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us for a Dani After Dark book club episode. Again, we reviewed Truman Capote's In Cold Blood. Or if you have an older edition, it might look like Zach's, which is totally different than mine. So, all right, everybody, enjoy the rest of your evening. And remember, until next time, we don't live in darkness. Darkness lives in us. Bye, everyone.